All right, so basics of torts. And unfortunately, it's not that kind of tort. That kind of tort has an E after the second T and is a much more delicious thing. And I can't bring you that kind of tort anyway because that has cherry schnapps in it if it's done correctly. Okay, so it's not that kind of tort. So what kind of torts are we talking about? A tort is a wrong. Later you'll see it kind of has a Latin root to it. We're not going to memorize that it has a Latin root or what that root was. But a tort is a wrong. Now, we don't really have torts in criminal law. Right? We just call them crimes. So torts are a matter of civil law. This does not mean you will never hear the word tort in criminal law, but this is the usual distinction that's drawn, and it's the one I want you to make because it makes it a lot easier to keep this stuff straight. And remember, we've talked about the difference between civil and criminal law. In criminal law, the victim of a wrong is society. If Carista kills Kim, and while you're at it, kill Autumn too. Right, might as well. Two birds with one stone, right, so to speak, or a knife, right, maybe. Okay. But when Carista is arrested, charged with a crime, the crime will not be the killing of Autumn and Kim. The crime will be committing murder. In civil law, the victim of a tort is the individual. And so in a civil case about this murder, we would name Autumn and Kim. And the punishment, if it's criminal law, it's being imprisoned either in a penitentiary or a jail. And in civil law, that's an unfortunate placing of that thing. Let's see if I can, yeah, there we go. Damages. And this is what you will hear if you see in the news coverage of one of these kinds of cases. You will see it referred to as damages. So in both, you might end up paying money because you might pay a fine in criminal law. That fine would go to the government. In civil law, that money is going to go to the victims or the family, somebody else who is designated on behalf of the victim. Because obviously, Autumn and Kim, it's unfortunate, but that money is not for you. You're dead. And that's rough. But, don't blame me. Blame Kim. Let's see, where else can I? There. Oh. We don't need that either. All right. Besides, it's going to make me look like I was a victim of O.J. Simpson, which would be really weird. He's still alive, so it could happen, but I don't think he knows who I am. All right. Can an act be a tort and a crime? Yes. And the famous case that never seems to escape the memory of Americans, even those of you who were not born like 15 years after this happened, and people still remember this. The case of O.J. Simpson. Right? And the murder of Nicole Brown and her friend Ron Goldman. And I know some of you are thinking, yeah, friend. No, it really seems he was just a friend. Case can be both, and it can have different outcomes in different courts. In the criminal trial, O.J. Simpson was famously acquitted. He had what was called the Dream Team. Dream Team was a popular way of referring to excellent groups of people. It had been applied to American basketball players in the Olympics in the 90s. and his high-dollar lawyers were referred to as a legal dream team. So he was acquitted. There were other things that went on. Jury composition, something we've recently studied was important. I think one of the videos we watched noted that there was a large proportion of African-American jurors in that case, which was not typical. In the civil case, though, things did not go OJ's way. He ended up having to pay over $33 million in damages to the families of his victims. Well, criminally, they aren't his victims. He was found not guilty, but civilly, he was found to be responsible for their wrongful deaths. Everybody finished with that one. When we talk about torts, notice I said he was found responsible for their wrongful deaths. And that means he is liable for their wrongful deaths. And liability means responsibility specifically for harm resulting from the actions of a human. Human actions are the key here. And let's turn the tables on Carista. If Carista is going for a walk in the park, maybe you're going for a walk in the park to dispose of the murder weapons, right? And you're bitten by a wild coyote. Right? Nobody is liable for that. Right? That coyote is, no humans are involved. If you're bitten by somebody's dog, the owner is likely responsible for your injury because they were not properly restraining their pet. And so it's got to be human actions. And we also need to understand that not all harm caused by humans means that someone is liable for that harm. The standard for determining responsibility is if the person who caused harm was practicing reasonable care. Reasonable care towards people, and towards property. So in this case, and if you don't know this already, you should know this, because I know sometimes we're all tempted to tailgate somebody maybe who's driving a little too slowly, right, or at least what we think is too slowly. If you rear end somebody in a traffic accident, it is your fault. Right? It does not matter. This happened to my wife. She was not the one who caused the accident, but there was kind of a pileup on I-29 down around Kansas City, and the car behind her did not stop in time. Doesn't matter if this stopping is required because of an accident that's already happened ahead of you. If you hit somebody's car from the back, you are responsible. Right? Because what the ticket will say, right, and what your insurance company will have to recognize is that you were following too closely, right, which means you were not exhibiting reasonable care, right, towards property or people. However, right, in this case, right, which looks clearly much less like an accident and much more like somebody intentionally trying to harm someone, right, turns out that guy's probably exhibiting reasonable care. Matter of fact, not even probably. He is exhibiting reasonable care. Why? You just kick that guy in the neck or the throat. Yeah, they're in a cage fight. Right? So reasonable care, right, in a cage, as long as he's following the rules of the engagement, right, he's okay. Now, if he does what I would have to do to survive one of those and pulls out a gun and shoots the other guy, it's different. Right? This is why I don't cage. If some of you are like, Dr. Brown's going to shoot somebody. No, I'm not. This is why I don't cage fight. Oh yeah, it would absolutely be. Although I had a giant doppelganger when I worked at Webster. And this guy, he did like mixed martial arts, and he did some of this fighting down in Kansas City. So he looked like me. We had about the same beard, same long hair, except that he was 6'7", so a solid foot taller than I was. And that's we always told the younger kids at Webster, like, this is why you eat your vegetables, right? Because Mr. McKenzie ate his vegetables, and I did not. And look how much bigger and stronger he is. He did this. It's gone, but there was a fantastic video on YouTube of him knocking a guy out. It looked like everything Hollywood. Hit the guy's face, like ripples across the other cheek, and that guy is down. All right. But reasonable care. Now, Nick, you had a question about this, though.
I was going to say that he was showing reasonable care because he's not intentionally going for anything that will cause lasting harm.
Yeah. No, that's fair too. Right? I mean, and he is also wearing gloves. Right? This is so. Yeah. Yes, Carissa.
There is a case. I can't remember the name, but there's a case of a boxer who accidentally killed a man in there.
In the ring, and was sued for it, or?
I actually can't remember the outcome of it, but would that be reasonable?
Well, no, I mean, because boxing is, despite those gloves, it's a very brutal sport, and even in cases not like Rocky, which Rocky was that where somebody gets killed? Is that 4? I don't really.
It was Creed.
Yeah, Apollo Creed got killed by the Russian, right? Which so it's I don't know. It's one of the Rockies. These things also happen in real life, but that's also going to be kind of reasonable care. So, Krista, fill us in. What's the scoop?
So, for last name Robinson, I guess. He dreamt that he killed his opponent in the ring, and then the next morning he said he couldn't fight it. He couldn't fight in the competition because he was scared, and he ended up killing him.
Wow.
Because they forced him to.
Yikes. That's wow. First you kill Kim and Autumn, and then you just drop that to bum the rest of us out. Man. All right. Points for Kim. Like, you are the most impactful student at Central High School today. No, sorry, Carista. So, Kim, you killed somebody last time, right?
No, that was I killed.
Is it always you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Sorry. See, this is clearly why I should not be on a jury, because I'd be like, I'm not sure who did what anymore. Okay. So, reasonable care matters. Now, if you are a boxer and you get in a fight, like outside of the boxing ring, and you kill, that's a little different because you are assumed to be more responsible for your fighting actions than somebody who's not a professional. Yeah. So the remedy, this is what we call compensation for harm. Right? Damages are what you pay, and the remedy is what's required. I know this, like all of this gets kind of tedious. And what we've looked at so far, kind of harms that are fairly easy to see, like bodily harm, damage to property. But as we're going to see, you can also be liable for someone's emotional harm. And I'm not saying it will be anyone in this classroom, but very frequently in society, people are skeptical of claims of emotional harm. There are standards for this. But, Maya, do you have that pass? I've got to have that pass, Maya. Yeah, go ahead and go get it for Miss McCauley or whoever signed it, please. And then there will also be some special circumstances depending on the specific nature of the case and the victim. So some of this could be, for example, lost wages. So, like for wage theft, or
they were supposed to be paying me minimum, but they're paying me $8 an hour.
Good. You got it though. You got your money?
Yeah.
Okay.
They gave it to me. I didn't have to do it.
Okay. Well, that's good. They probably didn't want that. If you are injured and you are unable to do your job, then you could sue for your lost wages. But if if Preston is a construction worker who needs the use of both arms and both feet, maybe you do heavy equipment operating and now you have lost the use of at least one of those limbs, right, you can sue for lost wages. Now, if somebody's dog does bite me and like I have a cast around my leg or something, I can still teach, right? I probably don't get to sue for lost wages.
All you need is one leg to work in construction.
Well, depending on what you do, right? I mean, and granted, I don't work in construction, but I'm guessing you do?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, now we're going to stop there, right? I just wanted to introduce torts. Let's see. Let's go ahead and do this part, and then I'm going to move you guys on to give you a little bit of time before the exit slip. So there are 3 types of torts we're going to look at. There are intentional torts or intentional wrongs. And then there are unintentional wrongs, which we refer to as negligent torts. Then there's a third kind of weird case, right, called strict liability. And don't worry if none of these make sense right now, especially that strict liability. Right, we will get there. And that's where we'll pick up next time with Happy Gilmore and Blazing Saddles. What a better way what a great way to start intentional wrongs.